Hey guys, welcome back. We're going to be covering another theory of gender inequality. This one is rational choice feminism. So, in our last video on liberal feminism, I talked about the fact that I like the idea of rational choice feminism because it adds a degree of agency to women's lives. It doesn't deny what liberal feminism talks about, which is that society is set up in a sexist way and it produces unequal outcomes, but it makes room for women's agency. It says that yes, that exists, but women then go about making the best choices they can to have the type of life that they want to have. And I like the fact that it tends to me, it fills out the picture of what a real life looks like. Yes, there is absolutely a sexist society that confronts a woman, but she also is strategic about how she moves through that. She's not, I don't want to say she's not a victim of sexism, because as every woman who's watching this would probably be able to attest, you don't get to choose whether or not you live in a sexist society and have people act toward you in sexist ways. But at the same time, you're not solely a victim. You are making choices to negotiate. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't then change society because, yeah, just negotiate it. I'm not saying that at all. But I am saying that in combination with liberal feminism, I think rational choice fills out the picture of what a real life is like, in a way that liberal feminism itself kind of doesn't go all the way through. So that's my introduction. As I said, this is a theory of inequality, which means it answers that first fundamental feminist question. So I'm looking at some aspect of society, education, the economy, day-to-day life, and where are the women in that situation? There aren't just generic people, there are men and women. Where are the women? And rational choice feminism is going to say they're in an unequal position. They don't have the same privileges. They don't get the same rewards that men do. And so why is that? Okay, so to take you back to rational choice, because most of this, until we get to here, is going to be just straight up rational choice theory from a few weeks ago. People are purposive actors. So the idea here is not like the interactionist where you step into a situation and you do gender. Rational choice says you wake up in the morning and you've got a game plan for your life. You have purposes that you are then rationally acting on, making the best choices you can to try to get to realize your purposes that you've chosen. So that's rational. That's straight up rational choice. But you're not omnipotent and omniscient. You're not a superhero. You go through life and you make the best choices given the information you have, and not every person has the same access to information, and constraints on your behavior. Rational choice feminism doesn't have a ton to say about this. I mean, different people have different access to information. I don't know exactly if their thinking would be that women have access on average to less information. It doesn't seem to me like that would be the perspective. Their perspective really comes in terms of constraints. So any person has got constraints. I'm an 18-year-old. I'm back in 32 years ago. I'm an 18-year-old man, and I want to have a relatively comfortable, if I can be wealthy, life. I can't just do whatever to make that happen. I can't just snap my fingers. I've got to do a bunch of things. So there are institutional constraints. There is an economy. Institution, just to refresh memories, is a patterned way of meeting some societal need. So the economy is our patterned way of meeting our needs for survival. There are a bunch of organizations that exist, corporations. There's a government that I could get a job in. But generally speaking, there's already this thing, the social institution of the economy, that exists that I have to fit into. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about institutional constraints. There are also opportunity costs. So the way I choose to fit into it means I am also choosing to not fit into it in a whole bunch of other ways. I chose to become a sociology professor, which meant I was choosing to not be a lawyer, to not be an engineer, to not be a doctor. So that's what we mean by opportunity cost. When we make one choice, there's a whole bunch of stuff we're choosing not to do. Where the feminism of rational choice feminism comes in is to say that in our sexist society, women face more institutional constraints and more opportunity costs than men do. So, an 18-year-old woman at the same time that I am stepping into society doesn't have the same set of institutional opportunities constraining her. She has way more constraints. I used the example a few videos ago, I think it was, about a woman who wants to have a career in sports. Well, factoring out the sexism part of it, factoring out the cultural attitudinal biases about that, there just are fewer jobs that a woman is likely to be able to get than a man. A person decides they want to be a football coach. If that person is a man, he's got a chance. If that person is a woman, she has almost no chance. So, taking that example, we would say that the institutional constraints on a rationally acting woman are greater than they are on a rationally acting man. And then when we add back in, even if the person is able to get those jobs, the degree of sexism that can come with it, with any job, the sexual harassment that goes on, those are institutional constraints as well that affect a woman's, when she wakes up in the morning, her choices that she's going to make. Okay, so institutional constraints greater on a woman than a man. The opportunity costs are also greater. So the example that rational choice feminism, the example that I'm going to use here is the idea of the ticking of the biological clock. A woman who wants to have a baby, if she decides she's going to do that, she has a different set of opportunity costs than a man who decides he wants to have a baby. Let's say it's my wife and I, and we're at basically the same stage of our career. If my wife takes maternity leave, she has to deal with the opportunity cost of choosing not just to take maternity leave and have a baby, but choosing to do that in a situation where a woman choosing to take that path is often looked down upon, is looked at as a less reliable worker than a man who, if I'm in that situation, I don't have to take maternity leave, right? I'm not going to end up in a situation where the last few months of my pregnancy, I might not be able to work. My choice to have a baby doesn't impact my career in the same way that a woman's decision to have a baby does her. So the opportunity costs are greater as well. And when you think about those two things interacting, which I kind of gave it a little bit of an example of, the idea that that not only is she choosing to possibly have to take some time off of work in which the people she's competing with can get work done, but also how is she going to be looked down upon for doing that in a career like, I don't know, whatever your career happens. I mean, Ruth Bader Ginsburg is actually a good example of this. She had to hide a pregnancy at Columbia University. I think it was Columbia University was where she was teaching, wherever she was teaching, by dressing in super baggy clothing because she was afraid of the institutional constraint of having a bunch of men say, well, you must not be serious about this if you're willing to have a baby at this stage of your career. A situation that a man is less likely to have to deal with. Okay. That's it for rational choice feminism. The thing that I like about it, just to go back to the introduction to this, is the idea that it gives us a way of thinking about the specific mechanisms that gender inequality is produced in an individual's life. She is confronted with a different set of institutional constraints. She is confronted with a different set of opportunity costs. And all of those those two things work together to produce this inequality. So why do we end up with inequality? It's because a woman faces different obstacles than a man does. Liberal feminism talks about that inequality being produced. In rational choice feminism, we actually see it see that inequality getting produced in the life of a woman who wakes up, has ideas about how she wants her life to go, and realizes that the obstacles she's facing are fundamentally different than a man's. Okay, that's it for rational choice feminism. We're going to move on. So right now, rational choice feminism is sort of providing us with a transition toward from theories of gender inequality to theories of gender oppression. I talked about biases against women in terms of institutional constraints here. In our next couple of theories of gender oppression rather than just inequality, what we're going to, the frame that we're going to use to look at women's lives is a frame in which men are deliberately trying to oppress women. So it's going to be, sorry, it's going to be kind of negative and horrible, but it's worth us exploring those ideas. So we'll start with that, with psychoanalytic feminism in our next video.